The good news is the New York Islanders got Mathew, Barzal, and Adam Pelech back in the lineup. The bad news is they went out and played poorly in a loss in regulation to one of the worst teams in the league. We break down all the moves that were made and what it means for this team next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, it certainly was an eventful weekend for the New York Islanders. First, the good news, the Islanders get Mathew Barzal and Adam Pelech back in the lineup. Both of them playing Sunday late afternoon against the Chicago Blackhawks. That's the good news. Anthony Duclair still on LTIR, but Anthony Duclair close, according to most reports, to coming back hopefully sometime this week. The Duke will be back in the Islanders lineup. The bad news, though, for the New York Islanders, another poor performance as they fall to the Chicago Blackhawks, one of the teams with the worst records in the NHL, in another sloppy, poorly played game. And they lose one of the more popular and frustrating former first-round picks as Oliver Wahlstrom is claimed off waivers and is now a Boston Bruin. Let's start with the game, because the game was so frustrating. And look, I could take the small picture, look at this game and talk about the Islanders and what they did wrong. And, you know, I don't have to go back and say, okay, yeah, they let in another power play goal. The special teams hurt them again. They couldn't score. I could go through the list of all the different things that the Islanders did poorly and did well. And I don't want to take a look at the small picture. I want to take a look at the big picture. Last week, everydayers will remember that we spoke about the importance of this past week toward telling us more about the New York Islanders. And we said, you know, it's not an easy game against the LA Kings. Then you got a home and home against the Blackhawks. Get me at least 4 points out of these games. And then they lost to the Kings, which wasn't surprising. LA playing really good hockey, but the Islanders played pretty well in that game. And I said, you know what? This could be a loss they could build on. If they keep playing the way they played against the Kings, they'll win more often than they'll lose. Well, if you go big picture and you look at this team, part of the problem is they never sustain when they play well. Maybe they do it for a game or two, sometimes even 3 or 4, but eventually you go back to the sloppy, poorly executed struggles that we see far too often from this team. And, you know, the Islanders played 2 games against the Chicago Blackhawks. And depending on what day of the week we're talking about, the Blackhawks were either 30th, 31st, or dead last in the NHL standings. Clearly, a team that is struggling. They're in a rebuild. They are not expected to make a playoff run. They just fired their coach because they didn't see progress. And the thing about the Islanders' last 2 games against this struggling Blackhawks team is that for those 2 games, if I asked you, if I took the uniforms off and you just watched the 2 teams playing without knowing which team was which, Could you tell me which team was battling for a playoff spot and which team was 31st in the NHL standings based on the way each team played? I don't think you could tell them apart. Both teams played sloppy hockey, turned the puck over at different times, had trouble clearing their zone, struggled on special teams, made some boneheaded plays, failed to capitalize on great scoring chances, passed when they should have shot. The same things that the Blackhawks were doing, the Islanders were doing largely. And if I were to ask you to watch this game without being able to identify which team is which, I think most observers, most scouts, most coaches, most fans would come back and say, you know what? These two games were games between two fairly evenly matched, struggling hockey teams. Teams that are not playing very good hockey right now and need to improve in all of these different areas in order to be competitive. For two games, yeah, the Islanders won one and they lost one. They almost blew the lead, keep in mind. Islanders were playing on the same level as the Chicago Blackhawks. That is not the mark of a team that's competing for a playoff spot, let alone a team that could contend for a Stanley Cup. That is not where the New York Islanders are right now. They are a lot closer to the Blackhawks in the way they've played than any of us would want to admit. And I could go back and say, yeah, okay, Mathew Barzal back in the lineup, that's a positive. And I'm not going to sit here and sweat the fact that, yeah, Barzy didn't figure in the scoring. He was a -2. He played 20, almost 21 minutes, led all Islander forwards in ice time. Yeah, his passing was a little bit off. His timing was a little bit off. What do you expect? To me, having Adam Pelech, who was a +1, and Mathew Barzal out there was good. And I don't expect them to be in mid-season form after missing so much time. So I'll take the positive and I'll give Barzy and Pelech a pass on the fact that they didn't have their A games. I didn't expect them to have their A games. But you got to have a better performance from the New York Islanders. Think about this. Going into the third period of this game for the New York Islanders, and the score was 3-2 Chicago, and the Islanders tie the game in the first minute of the period on a goal by Noah Dobson. So it's 3-3. 3-3 with 19 minutes left. The New York Islanders last played on Thursday. The Chicago Blackhawks played Saturday on the road in New Jersey and then had to fly back. So the Islanders were the more rested team. The Islanders were the better team record-wise on paper. They should have been able to take advantage of a tired Chicago club. And the Blackhawks, oh yeah, by the way, their starting goalie, unavailable, on IR, Peter Mrazek. They're playing Arvid Soderblom, who is their backup. Not their third-string guy, but still not playing their number one goalie. Islanders have their number one goalie. Islanders just got back two of their longtime injured players. Blackhawks, no such luck. The Islanders had every advantage. And then, to top it off, with 3 minutes and 20 seconds left, you get a power play. You get a gift power play. You can't finish? You can't finish and take advantage of this opportunity? Good teams, contending teams, take advantage of these opportunities. They find a way to do the things they need to do to win close games. Struggling teams like the Blackhawks and, yes, like the Islanders, they blow opportunities like this when the game is handed to you on a silver platter. So not only do the Islanders fail to score on the power play against a struggling Blackhawks team, they then turn around after the power play ends and give up the game-winning goal with less than a minute to go in the game, and then the empty netter to, put everybody out of their misery. You cannot tell me that the way the New York Islanders played the last two games, that they played substantially better than the Chicago Blackhawks. Should they be a better team than the Chicago Blackhawks on paper? Yes. But were they on the ice over the last 120 minutes of hockey? No. These two teams, water finds its own level. These two teams found each other. And the Islanders have to face facts that they are making the mistakes, the same mistakes, over and over and over again. Terrible special teams, not finishing, not taking advantage of opportunities, giveaways in your own end, unable to finish when you get a scoring chance, passing when you should shoot, shooting when you should pass, missing the net when you have an empty net. All of these mistakes that we as Islander fans and me as someone covering this team in addition have been watching over and over and over again. Eventually you are, as the cliche goes, what your record says you are. And that means at best, this Islanders team is mediocre. And they are not playing like a team that is capable of making the playoffs right now. They are playing a lot more like a team that is struggling. This needs to be fixed. And I don't think it can be fixed based on the way the roster is currently constructed. Now, we've got more to get to on today's show. We'll have our hero and GOAT of this game. We'll talk about the roster moves that were made, including saying goodbye to Oliver Wahlstrom. And we will discuss whether or not Ilya Sorokin is getting played too frequently right now. We've got a lot to discuss coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season, and that means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite feature on the Game Time app is the view from your seat. You go on the app, you can get a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And Islander fans, you can check out the latest odds for the Islanders' upcoming game on Tuesday against the Carolina Hurricanes. So check out the latest odds on FanDuel. Again, visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So the Islanders making some moves, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Oh, forgot to give you the clue for the Islanders' birthday of the day. And this is not an easy one, to be honest with you. But we're talking about a player who is still playing in Europe right now and was with the Islanders briefly during the 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022 seasons while spending most of his time in Bridgeport. Let's see if you can guess who that is coming up. All right. Hero and go to the game. Good Lord, it's tough, right? It's tough. If I have to pick a hero of the game, I'm going to split it between Mathew Barzal and Adam Pelech just for them to come back, okay? Just to get them back in the lineup, to me, that is so worthwhile. Maybe Noah Dobson, 8 shots on goal, one of them going in. Maybe that's something, but I can't enthusiastically give it to him based on everything. Go to the game. Ilya Sorokin, he lets in 4 goals on just 22 shots. We're going to get to that a little bit more coming up. I don't think he played horribly, but he certainly didn't have a good game. And we all know, even against a struggling team like the Chicago Blackhawks, the Islanders need to get solid goaltending to have a chance to win. Bo Horvat out of the lineup. He was day-to-day. He was a game-time decision, so no Bo in this game. Isaiah George and Grant Hutton were the other healthy scratches, and here's my concern. I don't like sitting Isaiah George. If he's going to sit every other game, or, if he's going to sit more often than he's going to play, he should be sent back down to Bridgeport. The man needs to play every day. That's how you get better. You get better by playing every day. Look at what happened to Samuel Bolduc. Bolduc ended up being the Islanders' 7th defenseman last year and barely saw the ice. His development stalled. I love what I've seen from Isaiah George. He has the potential to be a really solid NHL player. But if you really think that he is going to be in the press box behind Dennis Cholowski and Grant Hutton and Scott Mayfield on a regular basis, let the kid go down to Bridgeport. Let him play on the power play. Let him play on the PK. Let him play 25-plus minutes a game. The worst case scenario is that Isaiah George sits in the press box and only practices and maybe plays another 5 or 10 games the rest of the season. That is what we do not want to see from the New York Islanders. Now, the Islanders did place Semyon Varlamov on IR. We're going to get to that a little bit more. Then they placed 2 players on waivers in order to activate, for cap purposes, Mathew Barzal and Adam Pelech. The 2 players they waived, Pierre Engvall and Oliver Wahlstrom. For Oliver Wahlstrom, he was claimed. He is now a Boston Bruin. And unfortunately, I have to say that, Oliver Wahlstrom will go down as a disappointment for the New York Islanders. He was a former first-round pick, and he never was able to pan out. And part of it is the way the Islanders brought him along or didn't bring him along. And part of it was injuries, and part of it was the fact that Wally never seemed to find a home on any particular line on this team. Oliver Wahlstrom was the 11th overall pick by the Islanders in 2018. in his career with the Islanders. First played for them in 2019, 2020. So in parts of 6 seasons with the Islanders, he played in 220 games, 36 goals, 71 points. Only had 1 season, really, where he was a full-time player. Never scored more than 13 goals or 24 points in a year. Never found the consistency that you were hoping he would give you. And that was perhaps the most disappointing thing. I always liked Oliver Wahlstrom. I rooted and will continue to root for Oliver Wahlstrom to make good. I think the change of scenery is necessary and a good thing. And I think both Wally and the Islanders kind of needed to move on. The disappointing thing, obviously, the Islanders lose Oliver Wahlstrom for nothing. And Lou Lamoriello said over the summer when he made the qualifying offer, hey, we made the qualifying offer because we don't want to lose Wally for nothing. We're not going to give him away. Well, you did. And you could make the argument, Wally's lack of production this year sort of sealed that, and it did seal it. But if you look at the arc of Oliver Wahlstrom's career, how he was developed, how he was played at Bridgeport, how he was used on the island, how they benched him, gave him the tough love thing, you can't say the Islanders did the right thing in asset management with Oliver Wahlstrom. And while Wally's poor play this year was sort of the last nail in the coffin and why you lose him for nothing, mistakes were made in development all along the way, and the Islanders organization has to do a better job of drafting and developing players because we know they don't sign big-ticket free agents and they overpay in trades. So we have to see. I wish Wally luck. Pierre Engvall, by the way, sent down to Bridgeport, but when Bo Horvat ends up being unavailable, they recall him on an emergency basis. So he played against Chicago on Sunday. Didn't play badly. That line was really the best line the Islanders had in that game, but wasn't good enough. And again, Engvall, the key with him, he'll give you what you want for 2-3 games. Can't sustain it. Ends up going back to playing his default mode, and that makes Patrick Waugh angry and frustrated, makes Islander fans angry and frustrated. I'm sure it makes Pierre Engvall angry and frustrated. But for cap purposes, I think Engvall will be headed back down. And the fact that he has now cleared waivers twice tells you that the contract that Lou Lamoriello signed him to makes him untouchable as a player because teams can get him for free. All they have to do is assume the contract. He's not going anywhere until after the season. I can't imagine another team saying, yeah, I want 5.5 more years of Pierre Engvall. We'll see. Again, asset management by Lou Lamoriello, just not getting it done. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. We got to talk about Ilya Sorokin. We got to talk a little bit about that. We are going to talk about Sorokin. We're going to have our Islanders birthday of the day, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, it definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from our hosts, Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I do not understand what the New York Islanders are doing right now with Ilya Sorokin. Sorokin started again in this game against the Blackhawks. And look, I am a big Ilya Sorokin fan. But you cannot do what you did last year, which is wear him out. And yes, I know Varley is unavailable. But you know what? The Islanders played 2 games against a struggling Blackhawks team. What were the save percentages for Ilya Sorokin in those 2 games? .867 in the game on Thursday. .818 Sunday in Chicago. Add another poor performance earlier last week against the Kraken. Ilya Sorokin is basically in, let's say 3 of his last 6 games, he has been subpar. If you don't believe enough in your third string goalie in the organization, in this case, Marcus Hogberg, to play one of 2 games against the Chicago Blackhawks, one of the worst teams by record this year in the league, then obviously you don't believe enough in Marcus Hogberg at all. Why did you sign him? The whole thing about signing Hogberg was he's an experienced NHL goalie, and if we need, due to injury, to put him in for a few games here and there, he can get the job done. Well, in order for him to get the job done, he needs to play. And he didn't play. So you got to do it. This would have been the time. One of the 2 games against Chicago. Didn't matter which one. To me, you could have rested Sorokin on Thursday and played him Sunday, or you could have done the opposite. Doesn't matter. But you've got to get him some rest and get Hogberg some work. It is so frustrating to watch this team. Do you really have no faith that Hogberg can get the job done in one game against the Blackhawks? You can always pull him if he's dreadful. Now, you've got tough games coming up. Toronto coming up on the schedule. Carolina and Toronto are your next 2 games. You have got to get things straightened out. You've got to give one of those 2 games off to Ilya Sorokin. And yet, the Islanders don't seem like they're going to do that. We saw what happened to Sorokin last year when he had to play 12, 13, 14 games in a row. To watch it happening again, it's so frustrating sometimes with this team. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and we're going back a few days, but December 12th was the 32nd birthday of former Islanders forward Austin Czarnik. Czarnik, a Detroit native, 5'9", 170 pounds, played at the University of Miami of Ohio, then made his NHL debut with the Bruins in 2016-2017, played for the Flames, and then joined the Islanders during the 2020-2021 season. Spent parts of 2 seasons with the Islanders, had 2 goals, 5 points in 15 total games, then played for the Kraken, the Red Wings, and is now playing in Switzerland this year, where he has 29 points in 25 games. One of his best games as an Islander, January 21st, 2022. Islanders hosting the Arizona Coyotes at the UBS Arena. And with the Islanders up 1-0 late in the first period, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Austin Czarnik scores his second goal of the year. Anders Lee and Scott Mayfield with the assists. Islanders go on to blank the Coyotes by a 4-0 margin. For Austin Czarnik, he was a +3 in this game, scored on his only shot, and played 13 minutes and 59 seconds. So Austin Czarnik is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we will be back tomorrow. We'll have a full preview of the New York Islanders' upcoming game against the Carolina Hurricanes down in Raleigh. So make sure you join us for that, and hopefully we'll have some updates on Bo Horvat and Anthony Duclair as well. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.